When I was a boy, I was growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, in a home that had something that people here in California might not have ever heard of, a basement. In this basement, it wasn't a particularly appealing place to go. It was pretty dark and dank and dreary. There was a washer and a dryer down there. But there was also an adjoining room. And in that adjoining room was my father's tools, And he would go down there and work and create all sorts of things. He was sort of a self-taught woodworker, and he made coffee tables and cabinets. He made a playground for us. And I remember, I would remember hearing the tools start to go in the basement, and I would go down to watch and just look at it for a little while as he was doing that. And I remember walking into this dark space with some sunlight coming in at an angle through the windows that were way up high in the basement that were just poking up out of the ground. And there would be a single light bulb hanging on an extension cord that was illuminating the space. And there were all sorts of amazing scents and all sorts of amazing sensory input here. There was sawdust that was just being sprinkled everywhere. And that dust, I remember, would swirl around in that light. And it was just a beautiful thing to behold. I also remember that as my dad worked, little chips of wood would come off of whatever he was making or carving into, and they would fall. And they would fall anywhere. They would fall in any which way, any which direction. They'd fall elaborately, casually into patterns that were completely unpredictable all over his work table, and he'd occasionally have to brush them off. And then they would form entirely new patterns as they hit the floor. Let the chips fall. That's the meaning of that phrase, let the chips fall. It actually comes from that woodworking. I actually thought originally that it had to do with potato chip crumbs, but I was wrong about that. So somebody else was with me on that. But it has to do with carving, what would happen when you would carve something that would become a beautiful piece of art, and letting parts of it go, just letting them drop away in order to create that beautiful piece of art, whatever it was that you were making. Now, this is the time of year, as we have talked about already in this service, in which we honor our beloved dead. And there's lots of ways to honor our beloved dead. We can remember their lives. We can hold them up. We can think of their examples and the ways that they loved us and the ways that they loved the world. But one of the things that this holiday also invites is a reflection on our own mortality, on the meaning of death in our own lives, what that means when we begin to approach the time when we will let go. And what I'm thinking about today is that in the tradition of Hinduism, there is an idea that all of our lives can be split into various stages. And there's two main stages, but there's sort of 5 sub-stages, but I'll focus on the big two. But the first half of life is all about building our lives up. It's all about accumulating identity. It's about accumulating property and wealth. It's about forming relationships. It's finding a partner. It's having children. It's all about building and creating a life. The second half of life in Hinduism is about letting all that go. It's about letting it drop away. And we in the West, I don't think, have a way to talk about the meaning of that later stage in life of when we begin to let things go. I actually think that here in the West, we sort of just look at that as one misfortune after another, right? It's just one unfortunate thing that happens to us after the next, and we don't have a whole lot of spiritual meaning that we're able to attach to it. But in Hinduism, there's this idea that through these things that we begin to let go, through these chips that we begin to let fall, we are carving out the beautiful piece of artwork that our soul is. And we do not achieve our soul. It does not come into its final form until we have let go of those inessential pieces. What is the spiritual meaning for us as we lose different parts of our identities, as we lose different parts of what we found important, as we lose different parts of our relationships? Do we look at them as simply misfortunes, as simply sad things that happen to us? Or do we look at them as ways in which our very soul is being forged, in which our very soul is being forged? I can think back to the time 7 years ago when I lost my husband in an accident, and it was the most horrible experience that I ever had to face. And if I had the choice, I would have him back. At any time, I would make that choice. And I also recognize that it was through the crucible of that experience that my soul, that myself became what it is today. It shaped me, it winnowed me, it took me apart, and in that taking apart, I was able to discover a new beauty and possibility and openness that I didn't have before. These are the lessons that we are given at this time of year as we contemplate death, as we contemplate mortality, as we think about our ancestors. What are those things that are inessential to us that we have built up and attached onto our lives that we are able to let go in order to discover the beautiful soul that is formed through those experiences? Andrea Lerner says that Unitarian Universalism, that we Unitarian Universalists are not here to save your soul. We are here to help you grow the amazing soul that you already have. And in order to grow that amazing soul that you already have, it takes the beauty and the joy that is in life, and it also takes the loss. It takes the winnowing away. It is through all of that that our souls are forged in all of their beauty. My spiritual companions, may we find the courage to honor that today. Amen. I love you, and blessings on your journey.